Welcome into the lounge. We are getting closer to training camp. We're about a month away from the proposed start of training camp, and I know we're getting really excited. And one of the big news updates about that is that center Matt Skura is looking good, Garrett. Ahead of schedule.
Yes, passing conditioning test, coming off a major injury, tore three ligaments in his knee, and the fact that he is ahead of schedule is really good news for this team and for this offensive line. So we're gonna welcome him in here in a minute. But before we do that, I want you to know that when you trade up to Ram trucks, you're getting power, luxury, and technology like you never imagined. You don't become the back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year for nothing. And with the Ram 1500, you can get a lot of everything. Rear legroom, a reconfigurable center console. It's all available now, plus you get a lot more storage. Or you can trade up to the Ram 3500 to get 410 standard horsepower and a gas engine. For great deals and for more, go to ram.com. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and welcome in our guest today, center Matt Skura.
We are thrilled to have Matt Skura on. And Matt, I got to ask this question first. I saw that you have your cereal with half and half. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. You know, that's been a while since I've done that. I'm now converted to almond milk. So, but yeah, it was something I started to do in middle school. And then when our milk supply would run low, because me and my two other brothers would, drain the supply pretty quick. So then I saw that my parents would use half and half in their coffee. So I thought, mix it together and maybe it'll taste good. It ended up working. I think it made my parents pretty mad though when, after a few days, they'll be wondering where their half and half is for their coffee.
I used to like to chug those little tiny ones that you would get at restaurants. Like those little cups that you just kind of just throw them back. You know what I mean? It was kind of fun.
Yeah, I don't think I ever went that far with it.
Here's my question. With half and half, it comes in a kind of a small container. Did your parents get to a point where they had to start buying basically jugs of half and half to keep up with this habit?
Yeah, unfortunately they would, they bought the pint for themselves and then they would buy an extra pint. They'd just be like, all right, Matt, just use this one. And then whatever's left, we'll have. But yeah, it got pretty bad.
Your parents had to... Your parents had to basically institute a system for the half and half, like a college roommate system where you put your name on the milk jug in there. That's the system you had growing up.
Yeah, basically.
So then the follow-up is, can you attribute your half and half upbringing to your Wolverine-like healing powers?
Possibly. I don't know. I guess Ronnie obviously thought, there was a connection. But, yeah, maybe it made my bones nice and strong or something. Made me, genetic change my genes or something, and who knows.
So the good news this week, and part of the reason why we're having you on is because we've got a lot of good news with you. You're ahead of schedule, John Harbaugh said, and so can you just run us through kind of how you're feeling coming back from a major knee injury and surgery with your ACL, PCL, and MCL? That's a lot of CLs.
Yeah. So, no, I'm definitely feeling good. Obviously, passing the conditioning test was a huge milestone for me. And it was something that really I had, at the beginning of the month, it was something like, okay, I want to pass the conditioning test by the end of the month. And so on a Monday, Harbaugh was like, all right, we're going to run the conditioning test for real. And then I'm like, on Tuesday, the next day, we're going to run it for real. I'm like, all right, well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and see how we do. And so fortunately I was at the facility, so I was able to have a good surface to run on, and people were able to watch me do it as well. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a big milestone for me, and it felt really good to get that done. And then now it's just kind of working on the fine tuning stuff. So really this next month and a half, or whenever we get back to training camp, just really hammering away at some of those fine details in my knee and, in my leg, just making sure that everything's good to go for training camp and the season.
Can you talk about what has been a big hurdle for this? Was there a moment where you started to feel like, okay, I am getting back to full strength, or I am getting back to myself? Was it the conditioning test, or was it when you squatted for the first time? Was it when you ran for the first time? What was it? You accomplished something and you felt like, okay, I'm starting to feel like myself again here.
Yeah, I think it was a bunch of different stages. So getting to walk without crutches was awesome because I was out of crutches for or on crutches for 6 to 8 weeks. So that was annoying, and I wasn't able to let my left foot on the ground at all. So I was like no weight bearing, and so that was pretty rough. So getting off the crutches was great. Getting to back squat again was also like another mental milestone for me, I guess you could say, where I was starting to feel a little bit more back to myself. And then I would say getting back to running. Kind of back to where I felt comfortable as far as like planting and sprinting, all of that stuff. That's when I was like, all right, I think I can, really start pushing things even more. And I think the conditioning test kind of up to this point is kind of like the biggest thing physically and mentally that's helped me out.
All right. Well, I want to kind of rewind a little bit and relive this injury because I'm sure that's super fun for you. Week 12 in Los Angeles against the Rams. Can you run me just through what was going through your mind when that happened?
Yeah, so we just got, I think it was either a 3rd and short or a 4th and short, and it was kind of like a hurry up play. So like we got up to the huddle quick and got the play and then ran up to the line fast. And then, I felt like it was, just any other play that it was going to be successful, and I was having a good block. And then it was almost like towards the end of the play when I just like felt someone get thrown into my knee, and I just felt like 3 distinct pops, and I just immediately fell to the ground. And there was definitely an initial shock of like pain and everything like that. And so that definitely scared me. And I've banged up my other knee before, and been able to like get up and walk off the field. And so something that was like strange for me, I wasn't able to like extend my knee at first, and so I realized I dislocated my kneecap. So when I rolled over, it came back into place. And honestly, by this point, I wasn't really in that much pain. But the doctors would come out and they're like, "Hey, we want to check you out." And then they were able to like move my knee around pretty good. I know what like a normal like ACL, MCL knee test is like, and so I was like, okay, obviously, I probably tore my ACL. And they're like, all right, let's try to stand up. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I tried to put like some weight on my heel, and it was just like excruciating pain all the way up my leg. And I was like, yeah, no, I think I need the cart. And they're like, all right, we'll get you back out, like get the cart and get you on your way. Funny thing to take from it, I guess, is I was still like technically getting carted off. I was on the field on the cart when they scored their next touchdown.
Can't waste any time.
And so, that was kind of a weird, like funny moment, getting carted off the field, that I was like in the back part of the end zone, and they had scored. So I just got back into had to get an x-ray. Then they just did all the other assessments in the locker room.
Well, there were a lot of touchdowns that game, so not too surprising they scored one while you were on the field still. I mean, how hard was it mentally for you too? I mean, obviously the physical part of the mental part of, oh, this is a major injury that I'm going to have to come back from. And then also the part of we're in the middle of an unbelievable season, and I'm the anchor, in the middle of this offensive line. I'm a huge part of that success. How tough was that to kind of get over that hurdle mentally?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest things to get over. Is just like the what if, as far as, would we have gone to the Super Bowl? Would I have made a Pro Bowl? Like all these other things that you definitely think of when you're just, sitting on your couch for hours on end. And that's definitely, for the first like 3-4 months, that was the toughest thing for me to get over. Was just like, what if my foot was in a different spot on the ground? What if my body was in a different spot? What if I approached the block in a different way? You run through all those different scenarios, and, especially tough when you're just like, I was in the meeting rooms a little bit, but when I was after surgery, I wasn't as much. And so I was just like on the couch, and you just like are thinking to yourself, you're still watching TV, but you just run through those scenarios. And that was definitely tough. And obviously when we were playing the 49ers and all, like the rest of the season, I was, cheering on the guys as much as I can. all that stuff. But yeah, it was hard to watch just because I wasn't used to that. I've never had surgery that prevented me from playing football, and especially not a knee injury.
Was it for you? Was the physical toll? I mean, I remember seeing you in the building soon after, and I mean, I've seen a lot of guys come in from the building after surgeries, but I mean, your knee was all braced up. Like, it seemed like the physical toll of it when the doctors went in there, that it was a major injury. Like, how challenging was the physical toll, even just in the daily life? Like, I remember talking to you about just getting to the facility or getting in and out of a car. Like, those are some things that I think people don't necessarily think of that is a challenge when you're dealing with the kind of injury that you had.
Yeah. So before surgery, it actually wasn't too bad because I could like walk around. Like, I was missing 3 out of the 4 ligaments in my knee, but overall, like, I was, getting around fine. I could have a knee brace on. I could walk. But yeah, after the surgery, that's when kind of like life made a whole like 180. Because in just where I live in my townhome, it's 2.5 flights of stairs just to get up to my bedroom. And then a flight of stairs just to get to my living room. And so every day, I would be, just using my right leg as slow as I can, getting up all those flights of stairs. Going down the flights of stairs are definitely sketchy. I learned that through, some trial and error.
How'd you do it? What was your go-to technique?
Well, I learned you gotta go when you're going downstairs. You gotta go crutches first. Then I would use my right leg because I didn't realize, like, if you use your right leg to go down first, you're basically like 8 feet off the ground and you're getting like thrown into. So yeah, there were some sketchy moments, but yeah, like my wife had to help me get in the car, for 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, and had to drive me to the facility every single day. And, a lot was put on her more than anything. She had to change the ice pack on my knee every few hours. She had to help me get dressed in the morning.
That's commitment. That's commitment right there.
Yeah, it is. And so, and she's like, this is almost worse than having a newborn baby, except you're over 300 pounds, like trying to, take care of. So yeah, it was definitely, I mean, that was a whole new experience for me. I mean, even when I was able to start bending my knee again, like sitting in the front seat of a car as the passenger, I could only, with the seat reclined all the way back and everything, I could only be in the car for like 10 minutes before my quad was just like screaming because it was so tight. The muscles were so tight. So yeah, you definitely learn how much you need both of your legs in those situations.
For sure. I remember when I like broke my fibula and my wife had to drive me to work for a couple weeks, and you don't really like understand how much you value that like alone time in the car until you're driven to work every day. And I started complaining about her driving me to work. I was like, this sucks. I don't want to be like in the car with you this much. And she practically slapped me silly at that point. She's like, I'm bending over backwards, bro. Like, you better simmer down.
Yeah, I felt bad for my wife just because, like, she would have to. So we had to put our daughter's car seat in the third row of our car, and so then I would have to like scoot myself get Emerson in the car first, get myself in the car, then she could get in the car, and then figure out how to get my crutches so that they weren't in her way. So yeah, I felt bad going into the facility every day because it was a task for sure.
So let's turn it to a little more positive. Beyond the injury, before the injury, you were having a heck of a season. You were playing great. You were the anchor of the offensive line, right there in the middle. And you had really kind of silenced any questions coming into the season about, whether you were going to be the starter, and you had clearly solidified yourself as a great member of this offensive line. How pleased were you with what you were able to do through the first, half of the, 3/4 of the season before the injury?
Yeah, I mean, I knew going into the season I had a lot to prove. And that's the training camp and off season were really important to me, making sure I was getting bigger and stronger. And I thought having a great first half of the season or whatever it was huge for me, and it was definitely just a big confidence booster just for all of us, just as the whole offense was playing well. It definitely is contagious, and I don't know. It just felt good being able to prove myself, solidify myself in that way, and know that I was comfortable in my role, and getting to play against some of the best competition and playing well against them obviously helps too. So that's definitely what I'm trying to get back to, and obviously improve on the things that I saw last year as well. So still improving and trying to get better.
Do you feel like it's a bit of deja vu this year? And it's different questions. Obviously, it's an injury question, but now the question is, are you able to come back and step into the starting lineup again and come back from the injury? Basically, you proved yourself last year, then you had the injury, but now the question is, can you prove yourself again? Do you feel like it is a bit of deja vu?
A little bit. I mean, that's kind of been my story since high school through college. So that's definitely a role that I've obviously taken just mentally and physically, just knowing that I'm always going to be the underdog in most cases. And so I just try to prove that with my work ethic and determination. And so far it's worked out. So, but just going to have to prove to myself. That's the biggest thing too. Prove it to the coaches and to my teammates as well. Just that, I'm still the same player as I was before, and I can still even improve on the season that I had last year. So that's going to be the biggest challenge to myself. And, I like giving myself challenges, something to look forward to. So I think it's going to be fun to get back into camp and see where things go.
How close do you feel physically right now to being able to step into a practice, let's say?
Yeah. I feel fairly confident. I still have to do a lot more drills actually going against like someone where I'm actually like fitting up in a block where someone also is firing off the ball. So that's kind of where I think the last bit of the rehab is going to be.
Yeah, Garrett will do it. Garrett volunteers to be that guy for you.
Just give me full steam ahead.
Yeah, I could be that guy, but I don't think that's really going to give him any sort of confidence that he could do it in an NFL game. He's just going to shove me to the ground like a rag doll.
Yeah, so I think once I get back with like the O-line, doing O-line drills, maybe going against O-line and individual, I think that'll be a huge confidence booster as well. And I think I'm going to use probably like the first week of training camp to really like figure that out, to see, all right, maybe I need to take a couple more days to reintegrate, or maybe I'm ready to go. And so right now I feel good with like all my pass blocks and run blocking. But we'll have to see obviously once, I got to block Brandon Williams or, any of these other like Judon. So yeah, we'll definitely see how it feels. But right now I feel really good. And feel good about where I am, but thankfully I have a month or so left to go in this before camp starts and work on the little details.
Well, the conditioning test is no joke, because I ran it and as like under the offensive line like criteria. Yeah. So I did the same one you did, and literally I almost died. Like I was still hyperventilating 30 minutes. Like 30 minutes I was still felt like I was about to die. I was on the doorstep. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's something that you just want to get out of the way. We trained for it all off season for a reason, as you know. And I'm just glad I got it out of the way, because especially during this time where we have like time off technically from our virtual workouts, like just having that in the back of your mind, and it's tough. It's not easy to go right into training camp and your first day being running the conditioning test. So, I'm glad I do not have to do that.
Yeah, if you need a good laugh, you can just search for Mink running a conditioning test. It was about 5 years ago. It's a good laugh.
I'll definitely do
you have to find it. You'll have to find that video. So something I'm curious about, like when the season ended and you talked with reporters at Locker Cleanout Day, you talked about how you were confident that you'd be able to come back for training camp. And I think that surprised some people, knowing the severity of the injury. It was like, whoa, okay, he expects to be back early. What did you know at that point, or were you just basically projecting confidence? Like, did you feel like truly at that point you were definitely going to be back, or were you kind of, optimistic thoughts and that was the direction you were going?
A little bit of both. I think I just have to have positive thoughts about it, because it's easy to definitely put yourself in a hole and just say, like, I'm starting to plateau in this rehab. I don't feel like I'm getting better. Like, this feels like I'm never going to be able to come back. And so I think it was like that next day I was off my crutches. And so that was like obviously the start to really like putting in the work. And I've definitely learned to bet on myself as far as just like, believing in myself. And I know how much work I'm going to put in. And I know that I'm going to work hard at getting everything back to the way it was and feeling 100%. So I think it was just a little bit of both, just like projecting the confidence that, like, yeah, I think I know that I can work hard. And, this is obviously a major injury and a bump in the road, but it's something that I know I can overcome.
So what's it going to be like stepping back onto that line without Marshal Yanda next to you?
It's going to be weird. It's already been weird without him in Zoom meetings. He talked to us last week from his home in Iowa, so that was good to hear.
Did you recognize him?
Yeah, I mean, it's still really weird to see him like clean shave, like having a jawline and all this other stuff. I went to his house in May. It was like a couple of weeks before he had officially like moved, and he had opened the door, and I just like started laughing. I was like, I can't, like, this is so weird. Seeing you this skinny, because in February I saw him for the retirement thing, and he'd obviously lost some weight. Like, he was down to like 260, 265, which was like, he looked pretty normal. But now he's at like 240, 245, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you look like a little kid. So it's gonna be weird, but yeah, no, I think at this point it's definitely going to be always Marshall's spot as the right guard. Like, when I had to fill in there in 2017, like, that was always in the back of my mind too. Like, no matter how well like I play, I can do like a backflip and like make a crazy block. Like, they're like, yeah, well, Marshall did this. I'm like, all right, well, okay, but and so yeah, I think that just like speaks to the legacy that Marshall has left. But we're obviously going to have to find someone to fill that role. We just can't play with, two left guards or something. Just have Orlando play next to the center. So yeah, it's going to be weird. Definitely, like, the day in and day out not having there is going to be different. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
What do you think of the new guys who have come in, DJ Fluker and the couple of rookies with Tyree and Ben?
Yeah, I mean, they all seem like cool dudes. I haven't really like heard them talk too much. DJ seems like a really nice guy, down to earth dude. I haven't really talked, like, Ben. I don't think he's spoke once in our meetings. Like, he just like,
that's the rookie thing, right? I guess that's what he's doing.
Yeah, Marshal Yanda's advice lives on, apparently.
Yeah, be seen, not heard.
That's right.
Yeah, so I mean, overall they seem like cool dudes. I mean, I think it'll be better once we're all under the same roof, actually getting to like interact in the locker room and all that stuff. So yeah, and then building the chemistry on the field too will help.
And just as a big picture, how excited are you about what this team could do this year? Obviously, you won 14 games last year, broke all kinds of records on offense, rushing, and Lamar was an MVP. Like, do you feel like you pick up where you left off? What is the expectation in that regard?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, the biggest thought in like my mind is like, proving that we can do it again. That it wasn't just like 1 year that all cylinders were clicking. We got to be able to prove that we're a consistent team and a team that can consistently win. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge going forward. There's definitely going to be a huge target on our backs now. We're not going to be really catching anyone by surprise, running the ball 40, 50 times a game. And, that's going to be a huge challenge for us up front and as an offense, making sure that, we're putting in the right schemes for each week. And yeah, I think there's just going to be a big target on our backs for the whole season. And I think the wins, people will be like, oh yeah, they won just because they're good. But then if we lose a game, like people are gonna be like, oh, this is the worst. Like it's because this and this. And so I think we're just going to have to ride some of those waves.
Matt, I'm curious about your thoughts about returning to football, period, training camp and the season. And as a guy that's in the trenches and can't really socially distance in the trenches, I don't think they're going to line 6 feet up off the line as defensive linemen. What are your thoughts about maintaining your level of safety?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Obviously the Ravens are going to do everything they can to, try to limit people getting exposed to the coronavirus and trying to make sure that, we don't have some crazy outbreak, in training camp or during the season. I mean, you see some of these college programs that have like 20, 30 people test positive all at once. I mean, for a college team that has 90 to 100 people, that might not be as significant, but for a 53-man roster going into a game and you lose 20 to 30 people, I mean, I don't know like how that is feasible as far as like putting a team together and like making sure that you're ready to go. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is like the logistics of it. Like say someone from the other team gets sick, do they sit out? Does that just that one player sits out? What if that's a D lineman? Does the whole O line have to sit out for 2 weeks? Say if you lose Ronnie or any of the starters, Lamar gets it for whatever reason and he's out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. How does that look? And also like how do you test? Like how many times a week are we testing? All that stuff. So I think there's so many logistics and questions that still need to be answered. It's going to be interesting to see how the season is going to go as far as trying to limit the amount of cases and like flying on an airplane. You guys know like we take a ton of people with us on an away game, and so is that number going to have to be cut in half, or are we going to have to take like 2 different planes, one for players, one for staff?
Well, Garrett and I are off the plane. Yeah, stiffs like us are out.
I'm just saying, I'm worried about the plane snacks. Usually that's where I go grocery shopping. I stock up, chocolate almonds.
Exactly.
Can you bring some of those back for us?
Yeah. I'll give you guys like some to-go meals from like. Yeah. Well, it's just like stuff like that. Like there's so many little like logistical things that I think we don't think about. Like just even being in the O-line room, like there's so many of us and we're big body guys. Like I don't know. It's just there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered, but I'm going to do everything that it's going to take to be safe for myself. I'm going to have to wear my mask. I'm not touching a doorknob in the facility. That's I'm wearing a glove and or using my shirt to open up doors or whatever, and just keeping hand sanitizer on me everywhere I go. So. Yeah, we'll see. It's definitely going to be interesting how it all plays out.
Do you think that the players will do a lot of self-policing amongst yourselves? I mean, because it's there's a level of trust that you have to have with everybody that when they go home from the facility, there's going to be all these rules of the facility. It's going to be like lockdown central there, right? But when they go home, everybody has to be trusted to do their thing and be safe. Like, do you guys police each other? How well do you think that everybody's going to do with that?
Yeah, that's going to be tough, especially like in the locker room when we just want to like sit down and decompress for a little bit and everyone's just going to want to rip off their masks, like right. 50 to 90 guys at one time. There might have to be. I mean, and that's just it's going to suck, but it's just like, that's just going to have to be part of it. Like we're just going to have to kind of keep each other accountable in that way. Just like, hey, just keep your mask on, I guess. I don't know. It's going to be interesting in that aspect because, I've been in the facility a few times, obviously, during all of this. And, you get your temperature taken at the security gate, you get your temperature taken again in the lobby, you answer a survey, you go to the training room, and then you get your temperature taken again. And so obviously they're taking like the good steps right now. It's just going to be interesting when we get a large group in the facility.
I feel like Ronnie will be the mask police, right? Am I right or wrong?
I hope so. Either one of 2 ways. Either it's going to be like a conspiracy theory, or it's going to be like we need to, wear a mask 24/7. Doesn't matter if we're showering or on the field, we need to wear our masks. So, yeah, that's exactly. It's just going to be so I don't know, so difficult, but it's just going to be like logistically, like how do we manage all that?
I have one more serious question before we think of some fun question to let you go on. But like I've just like noticed your presence on social media during all the George Floyd and the social unrest. Like you've been pretty active about it and like speaking, saying things about it, retweeting things. It seems to me that like you're going through a process of kind of learning and listening and like finding your voice in all of this, like becoming an advocate. Can you talk about, is that right? Can you talk about what this process has been like for you?
Sure. I think part of in this whole situation, like for myself being a white guy, like I got to be, just as loud as voice as everyone else of guys who are my black counterpart. Fortunate enough, like, being in a football locker room since middle school, you're around a lot of different types of people from all different kind of backgrounds. So you're able to obviously get a sense of some of the things that they go through on a daily basis, things that you wouldn't even think about, the way they're looked at, the way they're perceived. And so, you hear about that, but me as a white guy, like I have all the privilege in the world. Like I don't have to worry about like dress codes. That's another thing that just recently come up. I don't have to worry about like going into a department store and, being looked at or being followed around, or, getting pulled over by a police officer. Like, yeah, I get nervous, but am I really in fear for my life? No. And so I think just being able to speak out, and, I shared a post that I made in 2017 after we played the Jaguars, just because, I had, like at the time, all the kneeling and the protests were relatively new, and there was a lot of obviously opinions just like there are now. And I had like family members and, just people back in my community, saying some crazy stuff. And so I had to basically put an end to it and just say, because honestly, like in the picture, I'm standing up in London, and I didn't know like all the other guys were going to be kneeling. And so people took it as like I was standing on purpose, when really that wasn't the case. And so I had to come out and I wanted to make a statement and say like, I support, my black teammates, because I don't know what they go through on a daily basis. I don't know, like, I've never lost someone to injustice as far as whether imprisonment or being killed. And so I need to support them, and I do support them. And so, yeah, I think it was just really big for me and important for me just to like say where I stand, and also just continue and being consistent in that message as well. Yeah, so, it's obviously extremely tough to see, and you wish that these things weren't happening. And I also wish that when Trayvon Martin got killed, that I should have spoke up and said something. There's definitely a lot of discomfort in speaking out. You don't know what people are going to think of you or how your perception is going to be changed of you. But yeah, I think we need a lot of action. We need a lot of change, and I just want to be part of that. And yeah, like you said, listen and learn.
Cool. Well, thank you, Matt. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you coming on, and we're rooting for you, man. We can't wait to get back out there, and I don't know if we'll be allowed back in the building, but at some point we'll see you on the field. All right, man.
And most importantly, don't forget the arrangement we have with the snacks.
Yeah,
you are our inside man on the snacks, plain snacks, cafeteria snacks. You're the guy.
Yeah, I'll take an extra duffel bag with me just to fill up, and I'll bring it back to you guys.
We appreciate it. Well, thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thank you,
guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, just really good stuff from Matt. Great guy. I mean, if the guy weren't a Duke Blue Devil, I'd really like him.
That's one thing that's you're holding against him.
Just the one thing. Just the one thing.
Hey,
Rivalries
well,
die. Well, we're not going to get into talking about rivalries with me and you because you have some crazy thoughts about what institutes a rivalry or constitutes a rivalry and what doesn't.
Yeah, well, we're not going to go down that path, but I do actually, I think it needs to actually be a rivalry in a game that people care about in order for it to be a rivalry. I think that's a blanket statement. If it's a game that people really care about, that's an important piece of the equation.
What are you talking about? People do care about men's basketball. Terps
No. Oh, I agree with that, but your perception that Ravens-Redskins is this massive rivalry. That's the one I really take issue with. That's a huge rivalry.
Road. That's what we're going down that road. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, really good stuff from Matt. And, I think that it's going to be interesting this year on the offensive line because there's a lot of competition. Matt talked about it. He knows that there's going to be competition. And John Harbaugh already said, Bradley Bozeman is going to probably get a look at center at some point before the season starts. Now, how much experimenting you do when you have missed so many practices, I think that that's a factor. Obviously, Patrick McCary came back. He stepped in and played well in place of Matt Skura. But Matt is a top-notch center in this league. Not saying anything about McCary or, the possibility of Bozeman, But I think, to me, if Matt Skura is healthy enough to play, I think it's his job to lose.
Right, and I think that the question has always just been about the health and whether he's able to be out there. I mean, he proved himself last year, and if he had played the entire season, there wouldn't have been a conversation this offseason about who the starting center is going to be.
Definitely not.
It's going to be Matt Skura. So that's the only thing that's been holding him back, and the fact that he is where he is right now says a lot about the work that he put in. And I think that it's when you talk to a guy that's gone through like an injury of that extent, it's just really interesting to hear how it affects every aspect of their lives. And I think that a lot of fans and even us, you see the injury and then you just in your head think, well, it'll take some time to get back but he'll be back on the field for training camp.
Right.
But to get back on the field for training camp or for the start of the season is a long, long road. So right. I'm with you. I think that if he's healthy, which it looks like he certainly is, he's probably going to be your starting center, which means right guard is going to be an open spot, and then Bozeman could be your left guard.
I mean, I would think that Bozeman would be your left guard.
Yeah, really. Bozeman would be the left guard, and then
Brett Bredesen could push him for that job, but I think that's a steep, that's a big task, tall task for a rookie to supplant a guy who started 16 games last year and played pretty darn well. So I expect, if I'm lining it up right now, if I'm predicting what it's going to be, I think it's Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. I think that it's Bradley Bozeman at left guard, Matt Skura at center, DJ Fluker at right guard, and then Orlando Brown Jr. at right tackle.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the rookies, Tyree Phillips and Ben Bredesen, they're going to challenge, but I think that they do have a bit of an uphill climb to earn a spot in the starting lineup because, let's face it, the Ravens had a really great offensive line last year. They had a great team, great offense. So,
and they haven't stepped on the field with the team yet.
For sure. All that. I think it's working against them for rookies. But it's not just that. I don't want to make it seem that they would be starting necessarily if it weren't for where things currently are. I think it's worth pointing out that these guys are really good, Bozeman, Skura in particular. So I'm encouraged for him. I really had questions when you have somebody goes through that kind of injury. I wondered, even when he said, when he said in the locker room, I'll be ready for training camp, I think there were a lot of eye rolls, to be honest, from the media. Like, we'll see, and the fact that he's where he is right now says a lot about him and his work ethic.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, we will have an episode of The Lounge next week during what is the 4th of July break for the Ravens. We all get next week off. I have a feeling there's probably still going to be something that pops up. There always is during 4th of July. But we are going to pre-tape an episode to roll out next week for you, in which we're going to do the Netflix draft that we've previously talked about. So we got to get the list of Netflix shows together here.
I got to build my board. I'm going to spend some time tonight perusing through Netflix to build out my board.
Well, and then I'm going to build out my board and then do some tinkering. So this is probably
another sleepless night
2 a.m. This is another 2 a.m. bedtime tonight as I tinker with my board. But we'll have that, and then I also want to tease. We are going to do the international podcast. We've had a fair amount of emails, a good response of people that want to come on. We haven't gotten back to any of you yet, but that doesn't mean we've ghosted you. We are going to do it. We wanted to figure out the logistics and make sure we could, because us, we just run our gyms. We're not the actual people that make it happen. All right, so the people that make it happen, they say we can make it happen. So now we're going to make it happen. So we'll get back to you, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and with every new season, there's new challenges to overcome, and Ram trucks are built to crush every one of the challenges. They're powerful, dependable, under the back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year. But beneath that hardened exterior, Ram 1500 offers a standard of comfort with rear legroom designed for a comfortable lead. And the available rear auto-leveling air suspension found in the Ram 3500 is beyond smooth. So for big cash allowances and exceptional lease offers, go to ram.com today. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and we will be back with you next week.